This is a neutral density filter. This is a 40 megapixel camera, and this is fast flowing water. A combination of those three can lead to some fantastic images. Let me explain why. ND filters are really useful tools to have. Their primary use in photography is to reduce shutter speed, and you use them for ethereal landscapes, the motion of water, the motion of clouds and stuff like that. They are graded by the number of stops of light that they actually reduce. 0.3 is 1 stop reduction, 0.6 is 2 stops reduction, 0.9, 3 stops reduction, etc. If you're going to buy ND filters, it's well worth getting a whole range of them. An ND8 or an ND64 might not, in fact probably won't be enough on a really bright sunny day to actually get that shutter speed down. And you don't want to get diffraction by stopping all the way down to f22. If you haven't seen my video on diffraction, that's well worth a look, and I'll put that in the description below. It's also worth buying good quality ND filters. Cheap ND filters can give your images a color cast that can throw the color off. Yes, you can correct it with RAW, but you don't really want to have to do that. If you're going to buy filters that put on an expensive lens, then why not have good quality glass to do it with? Like I said, there's a couple of naming conventions. There's plenty of charts on the internet if you're a little confused by it. And I also have my own blog post, which I'll put in the description below, about neutral density filters that will help you through that minefield. They're used to basically slow down the shutter speed. I use them a lot in video because in video I need to use the 180-degree rule. That means that if I'm shooting 25 frames a second, I need to use a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second. Now, as you can imagine, in bright light, that's virtually impossible, even if you stop down to f22 and all that the diffraction incurs with that. So you have to use neutral density filters. A lot of videographers will use variable neutral density filters. These are filters that you just turn and they gradually increase the density of the filter. I don't have one of those at the moment. I have had them in the past. At the moment, I'm just using fixed stop ND filters. In photography, they're used to slow down shutter speed for ethereal water. If you've got fast moving clouds, it can make a beautiful sort of cloudscape. And if you position your camera right, if you get the composition right, you're looking for the direction of the clouds to be moving towards the subject. So you can get those clouds or that water to be flowing towards the subject, and it makes for a really, really nice composition. Anyway, I'm going to shoot this series of shots now. There's a beautiful old log out in the middle of the weir here, and that makes an ideal static subject with which to compare the motion of the water. So I will shoot that no filter, ND8, ND64 and ND1000. So we'll see how that goes. So that's the images shot. I think they will look good. I've manually focused. I've underexposed very slightly because the whiteness of the water was throwing the exposure off. I was exposing manually, matching the shutter speed to 1 stop under to give a nice level on the water, and then adding each neutral density filter as I went through. So we'll take those back to the studio, load them up and put them into Lightroom and have a look at them in due course. So join me back in the studio. So welcome back to the studio. I've loaded the images into Lightroom here and we'll have a look at those in a moment. First, I want to just quickly talk about the different types of ND filters you can get. The most obvious one is the screw-in type of filter, which you literally screw into the filter thread on the front of your camera and that's it. And you can buy ND filters all the way through beyond 10 stops for that. The downside of that is that you need, if you have lenses with different filter threads, you need filters for each of those lenses, and that's a bit of a pain. Another option, which is a really good option and I used up until a couple of years ago, is to have a square filter system such as Lee filters. These are great. Basically, you put an adapter on the front of the lens and then you put a square filter holder on each of the lenses. That way you only need to have one set of filters because you're just having adapters on each of the lens. So you have a square filter system that is slightly larger than the largest lens that you've got. Usually that will be perhaps a 100mm square system, but if you're using a smaller APS-C or a M4.3 size sensor, you might be using a 75mm square filters instead. Personally, I've moved over to these filters. These are Case Wolverine magnetic filters, and they're brilliant. They're kind of a hybrid between the square filter and the screw-in filter. With these, you basically get an adapter that you screw into each of your lenses. I've got the 77mm because the largest filter diameter that I have is 77mm on my lenses. And then you magnetically attach these to the adapter, and they're really, really good. It's so easy, so simple. And the real advantage that you have over a square filter system is that you can now put a lens cap on. You have to have a magnetic lens cap, and the Case ones, to be fair, are quite expensive, but you can put a lens cap on your filter adapter without having to screw it on and off all the time when you're packing up your gear. So I highly recommend these. They're not cheap. I think I paid about £250. I've got an ND8, an ND64 and an ND1000 plus a circular polarizer. So it's a good little kit, comes in this lovely little leather case. I'm not sponsored by them. I bought this of my own accord, but they are really, really good filters. There are other filters out there that similar things. Nisi, I believe, might have a magnetic range, and I think some of these newer, smaller, lower budget manufacturers are also doing magnetic filters now as well. Anyway, we'll get into having a look at these images in Lightroom, and we'll see how it goes on there. So this is the first image in Lightroom, and this is the one that we took without any filters. It's shot at 1/400th of a second at f5.6, and as you can see, that 400th has pretty much frozen the water here. It looks a nice image, but the water is completely frozen. The next one I did, this is with the ND8, which cuts out 3 stops of light. It goes ND2, ND4, ND8, and this is 3 stops of light. This has brought down the exposure to 1/50th of a second, which is kind of what you would expect in relatively low light conditions, twilight and early sunrise, at that sort of level of light. And as you can see, there is definitely more motion in the water here. Quite a lot of the splashing has been blurred out. We'll move on to the next image, and you can really start to see the effect of reducing that shutter speed, the effect of that ND filter. In this case, the ND is an ND64, and that's a 6-stop reduction. It's given us a 1/6 of a second shutter speed. All of these are at f5.6, and if I zoom in, you can see that looks really, really nice. The water's blurred away beautifully, and if we go to the log, here, that's nice and solid. It gives that contrast, that sort of juxtaposition between the solidity of the rock and the motion of the water. I should also say you do need to have a really good quality tripod to do these shots. When you're looking at shutter speeds of more than a second, any motion in the tripod from wind or trucks going past or whatever will be magnified. So a good quality tripod is really, really the thing to have when shooting these ethereal water shots. So lastly, we'll go over to this one. This is using the ND1000, which is 10 stops. It's a 1.5 second exposure at f5.6, and you can see, as I mentioned earlier, that this water is almost becoming like a ghosty sort of effect, almost like an ethereal mist. Really, really nice looking effect, and very, very different from the first one. So if I actually pull up the first and the last one, the no filter and the ND filter, and we'll put them up like that, you can see on the right we have the no ND filter, shutter speed of 1/400th of a second. So by bringing down the shutter speed to 1.5 seconds, you get a really different looking image. I also did a couple of other shots. This one is actually close up. Let's go back to the full version. This is an ND8 again, so 3 stops reduction. And then I did this one, shot down at f8, and it was 5 seconds. So again, you can see there's quite a difference in the look of the water between these two filter levels. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. ND filters are wonderful tools to have in your camera bag. You can get really, really good images with them. This ethereal water, this slow water, not just in rivers and weirs, but in the coast as well, where you can almost turn the waves into an ethereal mist. It makes a wonderful looking shot. That's it for this video. In between shooting these images and shooting this bit to camera, I went off to Edinburgh for a couple of days and I didn't take my big camera out of the camera bag at all. I'll explain why in the next video. If you've enjoyed this video, please drop me a like. If you've really enjoyed this video and you've enjoyed my other content, drop me a subscription and I'll see you in the next one.